serving people with disabilities for 31 years here in North Carolina. They currently serve 10 individuals and will soon be serving 13 in May. Today we have Greta Bird, Executive Director of Liberty Corner Enterprises, to talk to us about their experience providing supported living. This webinar is being sponsored by the North Carolina Council on Developmental Disabilities and North Carolina Money Follows the Person project, a Medicaid project that assists Medicaid-eligible North Carolinians who live in inpatient facilities to move into their own homes and communities with support. This recording will be made available after the webinar is complete. Greta, I'll turn it over to you. Bear with us one moment. It seems we're having technical difficulties.
So not just services.
Greta?
Yes.
You were just on mute. I'm sorry. Can you start again from the beginning?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
I wanted to start by sharing the mission of Liberty Corner. It's to support people to live, work, and play in the homes and communities they choose. People are supported to live their lives interdependently, make informed choices, and achieve their dreams. We like to say we support people to have a life, not just services. And again, the slide isn't advancing, but I'm just going to launch forward and share some stories with you. Jennifer's story is one that I love to share because Jennifer lives in an apartment with a roommate. They both use wheelchairs for mobility. They live just outside the city limits where there's no bus service, so they have an accessible van. Jennifer requires support for all her personal care needs. She's at supported living level 3. And her health can deteriorate quickly. She has some unique health conditions that have been lifelong, and occasionally she has to seek medical care quickly and go to the emergency room. We support Jennifer to take medications, of course, support her and help with her meals. And she and her roommate have staff available 24 hours a day. Jennifer loves to go to concerts, and she is currently looking for a job. She had a job in the past in a movie theater, and she would like to start work again. So we support Jennifer to have the best possible quality of life. On the next slide, I want to share a story about Paul. Paul reminds me of what community means. We strive to help support people to be a part of their community when they live in their own apartment. We don't want them just to be a part of the community of people that we support, but a part of the community that they choose. I would say Paul's an introvert. He likes to go to the Y and play basketball. But he does prefer to live on his own. He has a job doing a paper route with the support of staff. He helps deliver real estate papers to business drop boxes in the area, and he has a small vending machine business. Some of the very cool things about Paul is he sings in perfect pitch, and music and books about music are extremely important to him, and he likes to spend time at Barnes & Noble looking at books about musical instruments, likes to go to the symphony, and Paul has lived in a lot of settings over the years. He's lived in an AFL during his high school years, and then he lived in a small 3-person group home, but he really prefers living by himself. He doesn't like it when too many people are in his apartment, and when we have a new staff that is training with a staff person, Paul's routines are very important to him and getting them right are very important to us. We call that training time shadowing, but Paul prefers that we don't have two staff in his apartment at once or too many people. He likes us to do that outside of his apartment. He's an extremely gentle and kind and soft-spoken soul. We think about in supported living. Next slide, please. We think about supported living for everyone. Barbara's a great example of someone who has advocated for herself to live in supported living. She's 62 years old, and she's received waiver services for almost 2 decades. Barbara's lived in a lot of different settings as well. She's lived in the institution. She's lived in larger group homes and an AFL setting. And her first move into an apartment was in 2012 with a roommate. And not unlike some of us who have moved into with roommates and that didn't work out, she really decided that she wanted to live in an apartment on her own. And so she does. She has been employed for 8 years with the town of Black Mountain here in western North Carolina. She really enjoys work. It's very important to her. And her apartment is part of the targeted program, the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency and Department of Health and Human Services targeted program with key program subsidies. So when Barbara moved into her own apartment to live by herself, she was receiving 12 hours of support a day and has an alarm system and some other technology from Simply Home to assist her. And Barbara quickly moved to receiving just an average of 6 to 7 hours of one-to-one support. She's she loves her independence, and she tells our staff to go home when she doesn't need them anymore. So as she's gotten more comfortable, and frankly, as we've gotten more comfortable, she tells staff that she no longer needs them, and they go home. She has met a lot of her neighbors. I like to say about Barbara that she's never met a stranger. Some of those neighbors act as some of those natural supports. She lived in close proximity to a person who had a community member who had volunteered to be her guardian. Barbara's sister had been her guardian for many years, and she passed away. So her guardian now is a community member who lives close by. Barbara loves having control over her money, and she's, again, a wonderful advocate. She recently went to her job and advocated, as she shared with me, for a raise. She wanted to be able to have a washer and dryer in her own apartment rather than using the community laundry at her apartment building, which was a good ways away from the apartment where she's in her unit. So she saved her money, and with some support from staff, they located a washer and dryer, and she purchased that. One of the really incredible things about Barbara is for the first time in 20 years, her diabetes is controlled with diet and exercise, and she's lost more than 80 pounds, and so she feels great. So that's just a quick story about Barbara. Next slide, please. We really think everybody wants to live how they want to live. And you see in the picture on your right, the young woman in the cap is Lisa. And she moved into her own apartment this past year. And her guardian, who is an agency guardian, but has been her guardian for many, many years, and her team was concerned, very concerned that maybe she might not be successful. And Lisa was a little nervous as well. After all, she had never lived on her own, and I think most of us probably remember the first time we moved out on our own as well, into that first apartment that's really your own. It was a little scary. It was scary, I bet, for all of us. But Lisa had been working at a local grocery store, and she had coworkers that helped her furnish her apartment. her coworkers have visited her at Christmas and have dropped in on her. And one of the things that I think is important to share about Lisa is Lisa lived in a smaller group home. She lived with two other roommates who also had autism. And nobody thought this was a bad place for Lisa. She had to share it with two fellows. It just wasn't her place. And as the slide says, we think everybody wants to live how they want to live. Lisa's been very, very successful in her apartment, and like Barbara, has needed less support than we thought she might, due to all of our nervousness about her moving out on her own for the first time. Next slide, please. We support Tammy and Kevin, her husband, in an apartment, and their 3 cats. But Tammy's been receiving services with Liberty Corner for about 14 years, and over the years, she too has lived in group homes, alternative family living. Tammy even lived in an ICF facility when she was younger. So just about every service model that we could come up with, except having a place of her own. She received support from a multifaceted team for her mental and physical health, and as well as navigating social interactions and relationships. Tammy and her husband transitioned. Tammy received 11 hours a day of support, and then transitioned and now receives fewer hours. Tammy calls and we provide support much as she needs it, and that sense of control and ability to ask for what she needs to has made a real difference in her life, rather than having a more routine schedule that she felt like she didn't have control over. Finding good staff matches and retaining staff it is a challenge, as most of you know. We also experience shortage of direct support staff, and have to get creative in our recruitment and our retention. But the main thing for Tammy was to have that choice and flexibility over the schedule in her day. Tammy and her husband have some dreams that they're working on. They really have a dream of moving from the apartment complex. Tammy likes to smoke wherever Tammy likes to smoke, and so there's some rules around smoking outside of her apartment, and she doesn't like that. So they have some dreams of moving, looking for some property and looking for a modular home, to ways to finance that, and staff have been exploring that with them. So, next slide, please. While we have 10 people in supported living, and soon to be 13, I just came from a meeting where we are in the planning process of 3 other people who will be moving in May. So we're very excited about that. So we believe that we can support others to live in supported living. This is Richard, and he currently lives in our 6-bed facility that we are on target for closing in August. Richard's in his 60s, and he has a traumatic brain injury. And when he was in college, just a few days before his 22nd birthday, he had a motorcycle accident. He has a seizure disorder and short-term memory loss and some additional health issues. He doesn't have a sense of taste or smell, so sometimes he can become very thin due to his lack of appetite. Richard loves to share stories and talk about when he was in college. And if you ask him how he's doing, he will say with great enthusiasm, "Fantastic." I've known Richard for more than 20 years, and I reintroduce myself to him every time I meet him due to his not having good short-term memory. And I don't doubt that his needs are met at the group home, but again, it's not his his home. He didn't decide who lived with him. And I have to always imagine what it would be like not deciding who lives with you. So we believe that everyone, no matter the medical or behavioral support needs, should have the right and can be supported in their own home. Next slide, please. I love this photo. Everybody needs a chance once in a while. I love this photo because it represents two things to me: taking a risk and getting support to take that risk. In this photo, Tracy's reaching out to Mary Sue to reassure her that she's going to be okay in the water. And I get a lot of questions from families, from guardians, and other providers about risk. That's what I've started to call the F questions. What if there's a fire, and do people have friends? I get asked, are people lonely when they live by themselves? And, what do you do to make sure that people are safe? The questions, what about a fire, is just about safety. Every parent, and I know every provider, wants a person to be safe. There's absolutely no argument there. And everybody wants people to have friends. But I do challenge us on the question of friends. Is our belief that loneliness and community connection isn't just cured by living in a group home with 5 other people that we didn't choose. It's about being a part of our community, living where we choose, and being with the people that we like and the people we want to be with when we want to be with them. And we also get questions about, I'll just call it romance. People want intimate relationships. People fall in love and they get married, just like Kevin and Tammy, and we can support those individuals too. I refer to it as, there is risk in providing supported living, but I refer to it as right risk. We want to make sure we help people with right risk. This picture reminds me of the dignity of risk. We wouldn't learn to swim or to drive a car, and we probably wouldn't fall in love without the dignity of risk. Right risk is about providing the support that is needed, no more and no less, to ensure individuals have the life they want. Next slide, please. This is our team, and our Monday meetings, our weekly consultation is what we call these meetings. And our motto, we took a little bit, stole it from Nike, and we put a twist on it: just do it, or we just do it. But I'd like to end by saying there are challenges and barriers, and our challenges oftentimes have nothing to do with the support of individuals. We've learned we can support individuals with diverse and complex needs, whether those are medical needs or needs for behavioral, mental health support, or a mixture of all of the above. But we do have a shortage of direct support professionals. This impacts the people we provide services and supports to. It impacts our staff, both our direct support staff and our supervisory staff who work to fill in and to address issues as they arise. Because we consider supported living as a full-time support, not a periodic support, so we provide an on-call rotation, so we're available 24 hours a day. There's also a shortage of affordable housing. Asheville is an expensive place to live these days. Actually, in a recent article came out putting Asheville up there with San Francisco and Miami as having the largest disparity between wages that people earn and the cost of living. And we know with our direct support professionals that a living wage is a challenge. We have tapped all of the resources. Our Section 8, or what is now Housing Choice Vouchers, have a waiting list for a waiting list. And we have individuals who could move tomorrow if we had a place for them to be, but finding an affordable place is a challenge. We've also learned that individuals need less support than we thought they would. We geared up to provide 24-hour supports that faded, or 12 hours of support, or 8 hours of support as we were planning. And what we've learned is that individuals have gained independence, and they need less than we thought they did. We've also learned that our model of team support works. We have a QP supervisor who does service coordination and planning, and we have a team leader who is a direct support professional, but also manages to ensure the continuity of staff and scheduling. They ensure that individuals, direct support staff, are trained and have coaching to support the specific needs of the individuals. As I mentioned, the QP team also provides 24-hour on-call support, and they do serve as backup staff as needed as well. And we have the weekly consultation team meeting with the Qs and the team leaders. As an agency, we've had to be creative and flexible. We know that in supported living that things do arise, things we could have never planned for despite very careful planning. We have to do a lot of service coordination, and we do crisis support. While we work with mental health agencies in North Carolina START and all of the community resources that we can unearth, we often find their gaps in services and support. We have to advocate on behalf of the individual and their families, and this takes time and staff resources. As I said, we've co-opted Nike's slogan, "We just do it." No grumbling, no pointing fingers, no we shouldn't have to, no who's on first. And we've all been in those meetings where the systems gaps were identified. And I, as executive director, I get asked sometimes, well, Greta, how do you afford to do that? And I look at folks, you can't bill for that. As an agency, we look at it this way. We can't afford not to. Next slide, please. It's been an emerging theme in this supported living project. Closer to free is a phrase that's arisen, and I'm not going to take credit for it. Music is a universal language, and in song we find some universal truth. And this is a song by the Bodines that I'll give credit to Jesse Smathers for locating. It's a song called Closer to Free, and it's had a great connection to this project. I'll close by saying the story that I shared about Paul started a long time ago, and Paul had a lot of services wrapped around him and lived in a smaller group home and had lots of support then. But I realized in compiling several presentations and talking about Paul that Paul's needs really haven't changed in the time that I've known him, and having lived and worked here in Asheville for over 25 years, I happen to have known him since he was 13. What has changed is his environment, and sometimes as service systems and providers, we pick services that are more important because that are more expensive, because we're providing services to a highest level of need in congregate settings. And some of those needs are created by the environment and not by the inherent to the person needing the support. I'm constantly reminded by Paul and others that we expect folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities to have coping skills that we don't expect of ourselves, and how we might react to living in larger settings. I've certainly been involved, and we still operate larger settings, and I know that there is good care in those settings as well. But I want to close in saying what we have learned is people with intellectual and developmental disabilities want an opportunity to live a life like you and me. And what we've noted is everybody wants to be a little closer to free. And I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you so much, Greta. And we do have some questions that were submitted electronically during registration, and we also have some questions that have come up during the webinar. So if you have questions, feel free to type them in your control panel, which is on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll try to get to as many of them as possible. So first, we'll start with some of the questions that were asked during the registration. Greta, I know you touched on this a little bit, but Todd from Alliance Behavioral Healthcare asked, what is the process for securing well-qualified supported living staff?
We do, let me kind of start at the beginning. We do, like most providers, we advertise and we recruit and we attend job fairs and we bring folks in, we schedule an interview. We have a set of interview questions that our teams have helped develop and the folks that we support have helped develop. We go through the interview process, and then the person has an opportunity. If we use something from person-centered thinking tools called a matching tool. So we look at what the needs of the person are, what their interests are. We look for staff that may have some shared interests, and we look at that, and then we have the staff go out and meet the individual that they will be potentially supporting. So that's in a nutshell kind of how we do it. Is it hard? I would be lying if I said it wasn't. It is hard to find enough direct support staff these days, but that's the process we use.
Great. Thank you so much, Greta. I know there's also a resource called Realistic Job Previews, which when I worked at an organization was helpful to share with DSP applicants, and it really gives them an idea of what their job would be working with individuals with intellectual disabilities. I'll make sure I include a link to some Realistic Job Preview websites in the follow-up email to this webinar for everybody. Okay, the next question is a question from Melissa Shore, and she said, are there any kind of clients that you think this housing model is not good for? And what kind of technology is used to provide support and safety?
The first part of the question, I haven't encountered anybody that I don't believe can be supported in supported living. Again, it may be technology, it may be 24-hour support, as I shared with Jennifer and her roommate do have a staff person 24/7. We do use technology, but interestingly so, we're getting better and better. We don't use a whole lot of technology. We do with the Barbara. I shared the story about Barbara. One of the things that folks were concerned about when Barbara moved into her own apartment is that she would get up in the night and go sit in the bathroom and fall back asleep. And so there's a sensor that wakes her up if that happens. Of course, we get a text when that happens. So we do use some technology. So I hope I answered the question.
Thank you, Greta. Another question was somebody online asked if you could, Mary Strong asked if you could share a little bit more about Simply Home and the technology that you use through them.
Yeah, we use the monitoring technology. I am by no means, my staff are much better experts in it than I am. I just go walk into the apartment and go, that is so cool. I'm always amazed that it's much simpler than I think it's going to be. For example, Barbara has the sensors in her room that are Velcroed to up. She didn't understand that, and we did learn that we need to do a much better job of educating the person as well as the staff about how those things work, because she just took them down, and we thought it was malfunction in the technology, but she was just like, I don't think I want these here. Again, we do learn. We have learned a lot as we go along around the technology, but I will say my staff is much more of an expert than I am. We use the medication with Tammy and her husband. We use the medication boxes so that they can have independence. She can have independence in taking her own medication. So those are some of the things that we use as well. I will get Jen Waite, who's on our staff, to follow up and give some resources about the technology as well.
Okay, fantastic. I'll also include a link in the follow-up email to Simply Home. They're a fabulous company in North Carolina who's done a lot of great work throughout the state. The next question is about landlords. Justice Bryan asks, hi Greta, my question is this. What has proven to be your most successful approaches to landlord recruitment for participating in supported living? Thanks so much.
Building relationships. Building relationships outside of what we normally do as human service providers. We really have cultivated some relationships. We have certainly gone out of our way to cultivate relationships with property managers and kind of get over that hump of is this, a privacy violation? Is this, HIPAA? We really have. Barbara has a fantastic relationship at her complex with the maintenance staff because again, these individuals are there in the community and interacting, and we felt like that's extremely important. And we still are trying to cultivate relationships with landlords, and I think it takes those of us who have been a little bit siloed in our human service side of the world. We belong to the Chamber of Commerce. We've certainly looked at the real estate associations and tried to really, again, get out of our silo of just service provision and work with landlords. And the three people that are moving upcoming, that's been a success of that, to the point I'll share a real quick story. That two ladies that will be moving in May both use wheelchairs for mobility. One apartment had been built in the 80s, and while it was kind of accessible, it was built back before the ADA, and so it wasn't really accessible. They would have had to pull in their bathroom and back out, so to speak. And the landlord had another two-bedroom unit available, and we didn't really even have to ask about reasonable accommodation. The property manager said, you know what, we'll go in and lower the counters and we'll make that one accessible. So those are, we thought we might have to use maybe reasonable accommodation, and look at, those kinds of things, but we didn't even have to based on the relationship. And I will say that's not so much what we did. Both of those young ladies really, when they did the interview with the property manager, they kind of endeared themselves to the property manager, and I think she kind of took it on herself to advocate to the to the owners and that sort of thing to make that a possibility. So I never negate that individuals, they're powerful in their own advocacy for themselves. So.
Great. Thank you so much. We have a lot of questions coming in. It seems like we have a lot of parents who are on this webinar, which is fabulous. One of the questions that we received is, can you speak to the intent of on-call coverage that's utilized? Do clients or the tenants mostly call if they need on-call coverage? Do landlords? And also, how do you ensure that no one is left without support?
We have two things. Let me start first with how we ensure that no one is left without support. We have let me put it the best way. It's called Humanity Shift Planning. So I could pull up on my computer right now and tell who's on shift at the places. It has technology called geofencing. So someone has to be where they say they are to clock in with their phone. With the wonderful technology that we have, you can't clock into someone's supported living apartment if you're a mile down the road. You have to be at that location. So that helps us know. We do train the individuals that live in supported living on how to get support. Our on-call system is a phone call. We do rotate that daily. So and of course the program director is back up to that. So we that's some of the use of the on-call and the technology. In terms of who calls, typically it's staff calling in if they're sick to say, I'm sick, I can't go in. So we're providing the backup staff. We do get an occasional call from a landlord or something, usually out of concern for somebody, not necessarily a complaint. But I will be totally transparent. Sometimes for example, we may have someone in supported living that isn't smoking, they may suspect is smoking in their unit, and so we but really in terms of the on call, it's mainly if, like any other system, if somebody is sick and can't show up, and we're going to get backup staff to go in, need to get backup staff. So I hope that answers the question.
Great, thank you. And a more technical question from Cherie Rajanstand. She asks, how do you pay the person on call? Not the funding stream, but do they get paid every hour they are on call, or only when they are actually working?
No, we do a stipend. We do a stipend. We have 5 supervisors that rotate on call. They prefer to rotate daily, not weekly. We have tried weekly. We have tried having a contracted person with experience that's not on our staff doing the weekends, and that didn't work well. That person didn't know. Our staff felt like that person didn't know our folks well enough, so that was something we quickly changed. So we do pay them a stipend in addition to their salary, an on-call stipend.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for answering that. The next question is from Aura, and she asks, do families need to contribute to supporting the individual due to budget constraints?
We don't. We only have one family, one person whose family has the resources to do that, and that was a family that contributed toward the cost of the accessible van. Otherwise, we have the families, I won't say they don't contribute at all. They contribute greatly in terms of support, but not financially. And we have many people we support that have public or agency guardians that don't have family involvement, unfortunately.
Wonderful. Okay, and this will be the final question. Somebody asked, what is the biggest challenge you face in provided supported living services, and what is the biggest reward you've received for providing supported living services?
That's a great question. The biggest challenge right now is finding direct support staff. It really is. We try to offer as much as we can to direct support staff as an agency. We do offer paid time off benefits. We do offer full time. We do pay for mileage, but we don't provide major medical coverage, insurance, and we just really struggle to find and retain enough staff. And so with our commitment, as I said, we don't see it as a periodic service. If their staff call in, we provide that backup and that sort of thing. So that's a struggle. That's a challenge. The greatest reward, I will tell you, is having someone come into your office, and this happened to me very recently. Barbara came in, and it was around the time she purchased her washing machine, and she just asked me, she said, will that make my water bill go up? And I said, no, it's included in your rent. So to have folks thinking further ahead than we are. I mean, she, in seeing people that maybe our organization, maybe other people have seen as not being able to live as independently as they do. And Lisa is a great example of that. Lisa and was very, very anxious, and while she lived in a place that was not a, it was a smaller 3-person home, she always seemed slightly anxious. And to see her come into my office and just say hi and talk about things that her friend, her coworkers stopping over Christmas, those kinds of things you can't measure, you can't collect data on. I will tell you in things we do collect data, outcomes information, we're CQL accredited, that we do see that people have more outcomes in their lives. But those things that we see that don't fit nicely in a data collection, or I can tell you that we have fewer incident reports and that sort of thing, or we're providing less staffing because people need less. Those things all are wonderful. But I think just seeing that people have a full life is exciting.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Greta. We appreciate your time today and telling us a little bit about Liberty Corner Enterprises' experience with supported living. And good luck onboarding those new 3 individuals. I'd like to thank everyone for attending our webinar. Please take a minute and complete the short survey that will be sent out via email today. In addition, a copy of this archived webinar and PowerPoint presentation will be available on the North Carolina Council on Developmental Disability website. I'll also make sure to send you all information about the few resources that we talked about today, including supported living and realistic job previews. Thank you all and have a fabulous day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.